So we already heard many presentations or many studies that were done for the update of the risk calculator. So I'll try fast to address the key modifications. I will talk about the process and use this. So the objectives here is to talk about the rationale for the update, to talk about the process and methodology of the update, and I will talk about the key modifications. Again, we heard many studies from our colleagues here, and I would not talk a lot about the studies, but I will address the main points. So the rationale for the update is that we have limitations of the 2021 risk calculator. There are so many underclassified patients with microvascular complications. We were very conservative in some groups. There was insufficient weight given to some risk factors, including frailty. There was insufficient weight given to modern therapies, and we did not include the AID and the continuous glucose monitoring. Now, there is an emerging real-world evidence that include that some high-risk populations fasted easily, and we know that they fasted safely. Some moderate risk individuals actually had glycemic complications, so probably they should have been evaluated as a higher risk, and you also have many international studies. The process and methodology included a multi-stage consensus-driven, and it was, there was many steps. We validated, we studied the validation studies that were many of them, I will discuss that later, and we re-weighted the existing evidence and risk factors, and we had also many systemic reviews for regional studies and surveys, and actually we also thought about including a new evidence. And we always thought about the practicality of the risk calculator in different settings. Now, the validation of the studies, probably you were a part of many of these studies. We already have more than 15 international studies. We had a very important meta-analysis, more than 10 countries, more than 10,000 patients, and always the findings were similar, that confirmed the predictive value of the for hypoglycemia and hyperglycemia, but also found overcautious classifications of our patients. And it was also mentioned in many of these studies that this is reliable but required refinement that reflects advances and also individual resilience, as we heard in a few presentations. Now, the key outcome, conclusion, and validation studies, again, probably you were a part of these, many studies, international ones, and you could see on the right the conclusions of each of these studies, many of those studies. Also, we have an immersion studies that included also some presentations already there about many of the risk factors or the evaluation of the risk factors that was not done earlier, but you could see here that there are so many studies. I'm not going to go through any of them. Also, emergent evidence on many, as we heard earlier, many presentations, and tomorrow we'll hear more presentations that addressed many issues that were not addressed previously. Now, again, we had now a meta-analysis, very important paper that we had, Dr. Abdul Qadir and the group, again, a meta-analysis of the validity of the risk calculator. The task force objectives were to refine the IDF-DaR risk calculator to improve the predictive accuracy across diverse patient populations and to align with the modern technologies and therapies, and to integrate risk markers like frailty and microvascular complications that were not addressed earlier. Now let me go to the key modifications. Now, we re-weighted the risk elements, and again, based on the new studies. Again, as you heard earlier, the duration of 20 years looks more risky than 10 years. So we included that in the new calculator. We grouped type 1 diabetes with the insulin that requires insulin, LADA. We also addressed the cutoffs of A1C, as also we heard earlier, of less than 7.5 and more than 9, and in real-world evidence. We expanded the hypoglycemic scoring, and we addressed awareness, frequency, and severity. Now again, we addressed the AID and the closed-loop systems. We included the ultra-long-acting basal insulin that was not previously addressed. We also addressed the modern sulfonylureas, and we separated them from the older ones. Also, we addressed the SGLT2 inhibitors and other NGLP and other treatments. Microvascular burden, and the word burden is very important here. We have a strong evidence from new studies now, and it shows clearly that this is a cumulative risk. So we consider 1 point for each risk factor, so they're additive, 0 versus 3. Macrovascular disease, as we heard earlier, also we reinforced based on the study that we heard from Dr. Muhammad, that we reinforced the old classification for that. Frailty and cognitive function, again, Dr. Zannari addressed that, and we now have a new 3-tier model: mild frailty, moderate frailty, and advanced frailty. Pregnancy, we were very clear this time that all pregnant women, regardless of the type of hyperglycemia in pregnancy, are high-risk patients and should not be fasting, and that to protect the maternal and fetal safety. Duration of diabetes, again, 10 years, 20 years makes difference. 10 years now is 0.5, so a patient might get a lower score, and 20 years is 1 point, and the evidence is very clear. Education and lifestyle elements, structured fasting, focused education gets 0 point, but absence of education now we get a point, and that will increase the risk score, and fasting duration and labor are still the same. Continuous CGM, very important. Now we know that the CGM is clearly approved to decrease the risk of hypoglycemia and hyperglycemia and daytime glucose variability, and enables us to monitor our patients closely and clearly. Then in that case, the group decided to give a protective factor of -0.5 for patients who are using CGM. Now here is the scoring system, and you could see, throughout, again, 14 same elements, however, a little modified, and the ranking is different now. Again, pregnancy 6.5, type of diabetes, type 1 or LADA 1 point, duration more than 21 point, 10 to 20.5. Then you go throughout all these treatments from multiple daily premixed insulin. You could see here that we have the open loop and the closed loop insulin, and you could see the different scoring for each one of them. Very important in this one that you select all that applies. So if a patient is taking insulin and sulfonylurea, that will increase the risk for that patient. You add whatever, so you could tick any of these and more than once. Presence of hypoglycemia, again, we classified hypoglycemia clearly on the severity and incidence. Also, level of A1C confirmed the same one as before. Glucose monitoring, you could see here the -0.5. Hyperglycemia emergency is still the same based on the timing, 6 months, 4 to 6 months, and 2 to 3 months. and the microvascular complications are still the same. Very important here, number 10, is the microvascular complications. Again, we classified nephropathy as one, and also we added the other microvascular complications together, 10B. And you could classify your patient as 3 points if 3 microvascular complications, 2 points for 2 microvascular, and 0 if there is no any microvascular complications. Frailty is now very important, and that will address the function and the age and all of that. Physical labor is still the same. Fasting focused education, again 0 or 1 point. If there is no education, then the patient would lose some and the risk will be higher. And fasting hours, 16 hours, according to the best studies that we have. We don't have enough evidence, but 16 hours, we have some supporting evidence, so 16 hours. Medical recommendations, again, is the same one. If the score is between 0 and 3 points, then fasting is safe. Between 3.5 and 6, there is a moderate risk, and fasting safety is not certain, and in that case, your patient will need to be fully evaluated, and medications should be adjusted, and monitoring of blood glucose is recommended. If the score is more than 6, this is a high-risk patient. Fasting is probably unsafe, but still, if your patient will insist on fasting, then you probably should do the same measures like before. Now, the clinical impact that we could imagine with these changes, that we will have a more accurate risk stratifications. We have, again, protective factors, and we probably will have a better prediction of glycemic events according to the studies that we have. Future efforts, that would require all of us to work on that, dissemination through digital health platforms, using the AI applications and CGM systems, and we need more validation studies and calibration by all of us for the new evidence. Conclusions: risk calculator is valuable for decision making and risk mitigation. The 2026 update is evidence-based, real-world validated, more individualized, clinically practical, and again, this is the same like before. It's aligned with religious recommendations. In 2 or 3 days, you will have this ready, as I understand from Dr. Muhammad. So it is updated already on the system. If you want to go through DaR Academy, you could get the updated one now. And all of these, probably some pictures are missing, were a part of this risk re-evaluation and the changes that we have. And this is the paper that was just published a few days ago. Thank you very much. Salam.